we all go through transitions in life and change. And during that period, usually it's not necessarily a positive experience. It's an experience of growth. We're growing in some way. We're being pruned in some way. A formation moment is what happens on the other side of that change. Instead of staying stuck in our mindset or, feeling negative emotions about where we find ourselves, a formation moment is creating something new on the other side. And that's exactly what we do.
Welcome back to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Hurdle, and I have a new friend with me today. But I do want to let you know, if you see a fuzzy back in the background because you're watching on YouTube, or you see this clip on social media or something, I'm not in my house, and I will apologize in advance if the audio is not as clear as possible. We've kind of gone back and forth to make sure that this isn't bad, and I will be, Jean, I know you're judging me. So when my editor gets this, our marketing coordinator gets this, and starts tackling it, hopefully it'll still be a good experience for you. But I did not want to delay recording with my new friend, Cheryl McDuffie James. She was introduced to me by a mutual friend here in the area, and we were able to just connect. And I was like, holy wow, she's such a powerful person, and she wrote this amazing book, and you have to be on my podcast. And she said, yes. So here we are. Before I say hello to her, let me read you her official bio. 2 days away from accepting the International Sales Excellence Award, which represented the top 1% of 17,000 sales professionals and leaders worldwide, standing atop a mountain in the Swiss Alps overlooking Lake Geneva, Cheryl knew her 20-year corporate career was coming to an end. And it did. Just a little over a year later, she launched Business Imaging, a leadership and change management firm with a focus on maximizing the potential of leaders and executives. For the last 17 years, Cheryl has committed herself to help leaders grow. From the ranks of Fortune 500 to privately held mid-sized companies, she helps teams and leaders navigate change and lead more effectively as they aspire to be better leaders. Her clients include global companies such as Medtronic and Siemens Energy, nonprofits including the YMCA, and many mid-market privately held companies. Cheryl helps leaders and their teams navigate their formation moments. And I have a feeling you're going to hear that phrase multiple times in this interview. Cheryl, thank you for bringing your greatness to the Bombshell Business Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Amber. I'm pleased to be here today with you and your guests.
Yes, they are teed up and ready to go. Listen, bombshells are loyal, they are action takers, and I guarantee you that they're going to hear some of the wisdom that you have to share today, and they're going to get on it. So you'll have a special connection with these women for the rest of your life.
Well, I love women like that.
Well, I know you do. Let's just dive in. I want to get to the heart of things.
All right.
We talked about this, but for everyone else, what made you write Evolving Eve, How Women Are Changing the Way We Love, Parent, Work, and Lead?
Well, as I share with you,
From corporate America, sis.
As I share with you when we first connected, Amber, that this book was really put on my heart. I knew I was going to write a book back in 2022, but the Lord really showed me exactly what I would be writing about when I was actually on a trip with some girlfriends, and He gave me the title. And from there, I have just taken it from there, and here we are.
So what was it that was the inspiration for this book? What was the observation or the feeling, or what was it that, listen, my book, that was straight from God, because Lord knows I couldn't have done that thing on my own. But there were things that were used to move me in that direction.
Yeah, I think really, as I reflected back, I tried to write a book about a decade ago and I couldn't get it finished. But when God put this back on my heart, that you would be writing a book, I didn't know what it would be. But I realized then that literally it was a culmination of my entire life, all of my experiences coming together as someone that really loves business. But I also realized there were so many other aspects of my life that led me to being the business professional that I am. And I think those life experiences are what led me to this particular title and subject matter to write a book for women, about women, and specifically Millennial and Gen Z women.
Yeah. And so you have this terminology that you use with the book and then also in your leadership and change management work and the formation moments. And all I see is Beyonce, like when I hear formation. So what is a formation moment to Cheryl?
You know, it's funny because real quick story. When I was writing the book and I was going through this with my editor, she was like, "Where did you get that from?" And I said, "I don't know." And so and I said it was someone else too. And they were like, they reached back out to me, a client the next day, and was like, what was that term you used? And I was like, this is resonating with people. And so I reached out to a patent attorney and I said, can you find out if I heard this somewhere before? And she was like, I will do it. And she looked it up and she's like, no, it's nowhere. So again, it's just God inspired. He gave me the term formation moments, but what it really means, Amber, it is literally when we all go through transitions in life and change. And during that period, usually it's not necessarily a positive experience. It's an experience of growth. We're growing in some way. We're being pruned in some way. A formation moment is what happens on the other side of that change. Instead of staying stuck in our mindset or, feeling negative emotions about where we find ourselves, a formation moment is creating something new on the other side. And that's exactly what we do.
I love that because it takes something scary that so many people don't love change. There are weirdos like me on the planet who are like, woohoo, I love change. I'm an innovative person, but it's really hard. And even like big change for me, like we talked about the change cycle before and everything. And so I have an idea of where I am in that when things are coming along, but to reframe it to this isn't uncomfortable change. This is a formation moment. Mm-hmm. Oh, that gave me goosies all down my legs just saying it out loud. What a reframe. So yes. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that with the formation moments, it's an opportunity for a couple things for us to change our mindset. And also, you talked about this audience as a can-do audience. That's what formation moments is about. It's about not just sitting in where you are, but taking action for where you want to be.
Yes. So, yeah, my brain is going in like 5 different directions right now. I'm like, okay, brain and mouth, please align. And where do we go with this next? Because, we talk about a bombshell. We redefine the term bombshell to mean bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman in business. And then sometimes I get pushback like unwaveringly confident. And it's like, oh, wait, no. We fall down. We just get back up. Mm-hmm. We dust that dirt off our shoulder and we keep trucking. And sometimes it's messy and sometimes we don't get all the dirt off, but we keep trucking. And so when I think about like what a bombshell means to me and what formation moments mean to you, like those things align. So let's pop your book open real quick. And can you take us through like the real, like maybe the first key idea that we're going to learn in your book? And obviously we want everybody to go to Amazon or Cheryl's website. We'll talk about all of that at the end of the show, but just to kind of give us a preview, what's that first key thing that we need to know about your book?
Is that we're descendants of Eve. And with that, we are not meant to be alone. We are created to be helpmates to our mate. And with that, that means that we can have the life that we desire, not designed by what social norms say or what other people say we should be, but it's the life that we want. And so that life encompasses so many different variations of us, which is why I have the book set up the way that I do through the 7 chapters. It starts with relationships. And that's where the creation came. We were created to be in relationship with our mate. But in doing that, a lot of times, I think as women, we are conditioned by society to wait to be chosen. And so I actually go against that grain, and I suggest to women first determine who you are and what is it that you want in a relationship. And when you figure that out, then you're better equipped to go after what you may really want, the relationship you want, instead of waiting to be chosen by someone else who may not have any idea of what's important to you. So it starts there. And that really means doing the inner work within ourselves.
So can you, because I talk about that, you got to do your work, you got to do your work. And, I think most of my audience understands what that means, but I want to hear your definition of what that means.
Well, when I say what I love about the first chapter is that at the end of the relationship chapter, I give a list of different action items. So for you girls out here who love to take action, I have plenty for you, but it starts with you really reflecting on who you are and what is it that you want in your life. And it's not an easy task to do. I remember when I first did that for myself early, right out of undergrad. And I sat down and just created this list of, things that I was, that I enjoy, what I was looking for in a mate, what I wasn't looking for in a mate. But when I did that work, it really made it easier for me to move forth. But I had to figure out me. What did I want? And I think too many times we are not doing that kind of work that's focused on us internally. It's so much how do we show up for everyone else?
Oh, so true. And I think that is a challenge in the bombshell community is that we have all these roles that we play and then we come dead last. And, what a hard lesson I've had to learn. We talk about putting your oxygen mask on first and everything, but then what is that in practice? So I had to learn the real hard way that if I'm not taking care of my spiritual health, my mental health, my physical health, if I am not defending that first, I am nothing for everyone else. I am not a whole me. Wouldn't a whole me be so much better to serve everyone who's dependent on me than a, kind of coming in half cocked and barely holding myself together me? Like that doesn't even make sense. But as women, why do we feel that that's like selfish or, self-serving? For us to be optimal, to be that helpmate that we are, so that great feminine energy that we have, that creative force that we have.
Well, I think a lot of that is society, right? I think it's the way society has defined us, that we are here as helpers, which we are, but that doesn't mean that as helpers we have to forgo who we are and our wants and needs in order to be there with everyone else. I think the best thing we know about how to do that is just as simple as every time we get on a plane, put your oxygen mask on yourself first, right? And that's what we really should shift the way we see how we show up in that way. If we pour into ourselves first, and that's not selfish, I think a lot of that guilt, again, is coming from external factors. I mean, we know there is a balance in that, but if you focus on being your best self, you will show up so much better for everyone else in your life. And it's that mindset. And we have to advocate for that for ourselves because society has not seen us as the ones that should be first. We are seen to be last. And that's a big change.
Yeah. I want to put two little asterisks on this episode as well. I know a lot of you bombshell are Christian or Catholic, Protestant, however you look at it. And I make no secret that that's my flavor, but that also doesn't mean that this episode and that this message isn't for you if you're not that. Like, I would just invite you to, like, if we're using God, then, maybe you could say the universe or my highest self or my inner knowing or whatever makes you feel comfortable to process through this information. Because even if you look up like spiritually or like in the Christian faith, what this means, you can find it in Wiccan tradition and it's all like open up a book. It says pretty much the same thing. So this is the lens that we're looking at this through, but I don't want you to tune it out or stop the episode because there's value in this for you. If you can reframe. The other thing is historically there have been, and I mean, in all the discrete minorities, and I can just only imagine as a woman of color, just the layers that you've had experienced. We're not man bashing, but this is a man's world, and women are divinely made just as much as men, and humans have this real knack for screwing things up. So just historically, whether it is legally, whether it is politically, whatever those things to us. Socially, there's so much at play that have put women in a box or have stifled women's voices or our autonomy or things like that. So if you're listening, you know, I just want you to understand that nobody's knocking anybody, nobody's trying to shove God down your throat, but these are realities for so many of our listeners, and that's why I want to address these issues. So thank you for letting me put my asterisk there. Let's move past that initial phase. I know your book is broken up into core sections. Where would, and I know we don't have time to like go over every single thing, but where do you see the breakthrough moment? Like, where are we going to find the breakthrough in evolving Eve?
Yeah, so it's a couple of key things, but I think around formation moments, I talk about 3 types of transitions that we primarily experience. One is a shift, which is fueled by passion and purpose. It's my favorite of the all transitions because it's a lot about like how I transitioned from 20 years in Fortune 200 companies to becoming an entrepreneur. It's when you leave one thing and you end up doing something completely different. So that is a shift. And so that's what I think that the beauty of that, when you have a shift, it usually is something that is headed your way. And you have been fueled by this for a while. It's just a matter of when you take action. And if you don't choose to take action on it, you will be led to take action on it. It's not a choice, like most transitions aren't. The second one is a reset, which is the most common. And the major interesting thing about the reset is it's usually finding that timing is the obstacle in terms of what happens with you in the reset. And so it's when you find yourself in a space and you are looking to elevate. It may not be leaving that space at all, but it may mean doing something in that space differently than the way you are using that now. And I talk about an experience of a young woman in the book because I tell a lot of stories about my clients in the book who was in a situation where she was ready to go and become an entrepreneur and be a consultant doing the work that she does. But because of her husband had just started a new aspect of his career, she has very small children, the timing wasn't right. So what I talk about in the reset is how do we still continue to make those small steps forward, even though we can't take the plunge that we want right now, right? And the final one is the detour. And the detour, unfortunately, is the most difficult one. It's just hard, Amber. It's nothing easy about it. Every aspect of it feels hard. And you feel like giving up. But it's not intended for you to give up. It's intended for you to see it to the end, but it will not be easy. But through that process, you will find your way. And when you find your way, you will also determine the best way forward coming out of that detour. So I think that's a big component. That's actually chapter 5 of my book. And when I talk about those things. And then I think the other piece is what you alluded to earlier around men, right? How do we partner with men in order to get the types of lives that we desire, right? Because men hold the power in business, in every aspect, community, you name it, they are still the power holders. But we, in order to get where we need to be, we need to partner with them. I am a big advocate of partnering with men. I would not be where I am today if men had not decided to sponsor me and support me along the way.
You and I so agree on that. And it's interesting when men who don't know anything about what it is I do or how I talk about things or anything, they're like, oh, you're just a man basher. And I'm like, quite literally, a man wrote the foreword to The Bombshell Businesswoman, How to Become a Bold, Brave, Unwavering, really confident. Well, it was named a little bit different, but anyways, a man wrote the foreword to that. What does that tell you about who I respect? Like, I respected him so much that I wanted him to introduce me because that man understands how much of a bold, brave, unwaveringly confident businesswoman I am because he led me. And so this is a man versus woman. This is the yin and the yang come together and we make a whole. And that's in business, that's in our personal lives, so good. And I want to add too, if we could put this in the show notes. If you're not a Christian, you might not like this book, but if you are a Christian, Tony Evans wrote a book called Detours, and The Unpredictable Path to Your Destiny. And it's a good read. So read Cheryl's book. And then if you want to go deeper in that section, that's the next book to read. Okay. So tell me more about where we go once we have identified the kind of change that we're moving through. What happens after that?
Well, that's where the formation moment happens, right? That's where you create something new. And this goes into a lot of the work that I talk about at the, I started talking about it throughout the book, but at the end of the book, in the last chapter, I really do talk more about mindset. Right. And the formation moment and creating something new requires us to shift the way we see things. One thing that we can control is the way we actually think about things. And that mindset shift is critical, whether that's an inward or an outward mindset. And when I say inward, that's when we don't see others as we see ourselves. We see them as a pathway to getting the things that we want. Not having the same feelings, emotions, challenges that we face, we actually do not identify with them in that way. They're just a conduit to whatever our destination is. But an outward mindset is when we see others as we see ourselves. We see them as people that have families and needs and, health situations, and they want to be happy. And that type of mindset is what really helps us to create something new coming out of challenges or opportunities in our life. But it's the ideal way you want to lead in your roles from a leadership perspective.
Absolutely. Love, 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 love. Okay, so when we're moving through these different challenges and then we get to that formation moment, what type of resistance do you most frequently see in leaders or women when they start having to woman up to that moment in time?
Well, that varies. I have a lot of statistics that I use in the book, but one of the things that we as women, I think, have to do is to stop saying no. And thinking that we have to have 100% of what's required to take the opportunity. And I mean no specifically in this regard, because we need to say no more about a whole lot of other things. But what we know is a man is more likely to have significantly less than what's being desired for the role that you may be applying to, or whatever that situation may be. And they'll raise their hand and say yes. Where we as women, statistically, what we do is if we don't have everything check every box, we say no, or we don't even enter ourselves in that platform. And that's something that has to change. We have to start raising our hands and also trusting ourselves to know what got us this far can get us to where we need to be. And that's the thing I think that's really important from a resistance standpoint that we see, and statistically we know about women. And that's where we can show up differently and stop being afraid of the unknown, stepping into that boldly. And I know that's difficult for some people who are more risk averse, but there are ways in how you can do that. Maybe reflecting on a past experience where you've seen yourself to be able to tackle something that you didn't have 100% before. That's something that you can do to help remind you that you've done this before.
Absolutely. I've encountered that a lot with women myself. It's just like, well, I don't know if I can do it. I've never done anything like that before. And I'm like, well, maybe not exactly like this, but didn't you X, Y, Z and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, F, and they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, then what makes this so hard? Like, look at all these things. Look at your history. Look at your grit. Look what you've overcome. Like, don't you have the data and the evidence to show you that you can do this today? And it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. You're so right, Cheryl. It's like, here's the job description. Well, I can do 85% of it. I'm uncertain about the other percentage. Whereas a man will be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Let me apply. It's like two different worlds.
It is. And we also know that leaders tend to support and advocate for those that mimic themselves. And that's some data I also share in the book. So when men see other men that remind them of themselves or show qualities and traits that they have, they're more likely to unconsciously, attach themselves and want to help those individuals along. If we get more women who are in roles, we too will do the same thing. But that's another reason why it's important for us to say yes, because if we don't have a seat at the table, then we're not able to be a part of creating the policies, the regulations, the things that we need to help shape our lives and keep us in consideration of how the outcomes look.
Yeah, seat at the table. And the crazy thing is so often we get invited and we're given a seat at the table and then we're too intimidated to pull all the way up. So if you get a sit at the table, or if you get a seat at the table, pull all the way up, give your input. There's going to be times where you might feel like you sounded stupid. Guess what? You're going to sound smarter the next time. Just keep going. I think Cheryl and I are going to go on a world tour trying to empower women to get the lead out and get out there and show your greatness and be a light and use your gifts and let's reshape things. And I can't remember if we talked about this before or not, but there is a huge transition of wealth that is currently happening that's going to peak in not too many years. And guess who's taken over? Women. So don't we want to be equipped for that responsibility? I know we're already the financial decision makers. That's already a fact. Like anyone who does marketing knows that. Now we're actually going to own the wealth. So what is that shift for you as we're evolving?
Yeah, I talk about this in chapter 3 on work, and also a little bit on leading in chapter 4. It literally gets into the fact that there's some. So let me put it this way: there's good positives and there's some cautions here, right? So women, when you think about women working with women, Amber, I think you and I talked about this. We kind of came up in the era where we were mostly working with men. So we've learned how to master how to work with men. 85% of my clients are men. So the men were like, what are you doing, girl, when you wrote a book about women? But that's where I was led to write. But I will say this is that we have to be aware that we have to put aside anything other than how do we unite and help each other move forward. That will be one of the bigger challenges that we have is how do we unite and move forward? And the reason that's so important, particularly as you mentioned about the wealth piece, is that the wealth gap between men and women continues to be a problem. That continues to be a problem. And the only way we're going to really shape that, because men have had all this time to fix it and they haven't, we've got to have women in spaces where they can actually ensure that we're getting equal pay, et cetera, et cetera. I gave an example in a presentation I did a couple of nights ago where for my first female manager, when I was hired in a sales leadership role years ago, she actually paid me more than anybody on the team. I was the only woman, and I was one of her first hires too. Now, I will say that I am a very master negotiator, so that had something to do with it too. But just the fact that it wasn't hard to get that with her. I mean, I laid my case and she believed it and she went with it. We will do that more for other women because we know we're capable, right? So if we're not in those spaces, we can't make those kinds of calls. That helps with the wealth gap. That ensures that we have the types of benefits and support systems to help us to have our families and also have a thriving career. So think about that and reframe that differently in your mind. It's not just about the power. It's about how do we utilize the power to make our lives easier as women who want to be career professionals.
I love that. I love that sentiment. And I think that is so aligned with the bombshell mindset of it's not us versus them. And I often say the bombshell brand is about seeing and supporting strong women for who they are and who they can become, not at the expense of men, but for the benefit of all. And I think that And, that all piece is where you and I really unite on it doesn't have to be this and this. It's us all at the same time. And we have unique things, but we're all on the same team trying to move society forward. So let's do it. I think your beautiful expression is a great place to transition to talk about where we can find you. So I know that we're going to put your link tree in the show notes so people can connect with you on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, X. And then where can we find your book?
So my book is on Amazon.com. And so it's easy to find. Evolving Eve, How Women Are Changing the Way We Love, Parent, Work, and Lead. And it's available on Kindle as well as a hardback copy. And I want to just, kind of just piggyback off of something you said. This book is about the evolution of women. Yes, Eve being, the woman, the first woman, the mother of all living is where we start. She's used as a symbolic way of showing how we have gone from where she was and what her purpose in life was to how do you find your purpose in life. And so that it's more about that journey. And I want people to really be aware of that. She's just the common thread that we see as we evolve as women in our relationships, our parenting, our work, our leadership, and then what lies ahead for us in the future.
Love it. I love that. So we can definitely find all of her contact information, every which way you can reach her, where to download the book. CherylMcDuffieJames.com, and Duffie is DUFFIE if you're eager to go there right now and don't want to go to the show notes. So that's everywhere we're going to find you. Now it's the final question. What is Cheryl's parting piece of advice for a bombshell, a bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman?
Given the fact that bombshells are already badass women, I think it's not, they are ready for what I present in this book. I'm asking you to break barriers. I'm asking you to be bold. I'm asking you to see yourselves as not just a singular, in a singular way. You can be, someone who really wants to have it all and still be that dedicated and present parent. You can be someone that wants to have it all and still be a loving and supportive mate. You can be someone that wants it all and still be that leader, just leveraging what we know we do best, nurturing and being able to support one another. That's why the statistics show we make better leaders than men. And no offense to men, but we are innately created in that way. And so I would hope that you guys would check out my book, check out my website at CherylMcDuffieJames.com. And Amber, thank you so much for having me and introducing me to the bombshells. I really think that this is going to be a great first introduction. And I hope you guys will follow me. I'm probably more present on LinkedIn and Instagram than anywhere. So I hope I meet you guys somewhere else.
I'm like, we don't need more cat videos. We're businesswomen. Get on LinkedIn. So you can hang out with Cheryl and I there. And I strongly encourage you to. And you know that you know somebody that needs to hear Cheryl's wisdom or buy her book. So, obviously you want to forward this episode to that person that is put on your heart. If you have not left a rating and review, go to your favorite podcast listening app and do that. And if you're on YouTube, the 6 people who watch us on YouTube, if you'll like this, leave a comment, whatever, that will help things with the algorithm, even though we're terrible at SEO on YouTube. We'll get there eventually. But I just really treasure the time that you're spending with Cheryl and I today and every guest every single week, because we are busy women. We have full lives. And so thank you for allowing me to introduce you to incredible people like Cheryl, who can breathe life into your week. And with that, I say farewell, and I will see you on the next episode.